Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back 20,000 years to the depths of the last ice age. We are going to experience the brutal, freezing, yet strangely cozy reality of surviving a winter that lasts for generations. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to a world that doesn't want you to exist. The darkness is still pressed against the mouth of the cave, thick and absolute, but something has woken you. Perhaps it's the cold, which has found its way past the layers of fur piled on your body and settled into your bones like an unwelcome guest. Perhaps it's the wind, which has been howling for 3 days straight with a voice that sounds almost human, almost angry. Or perhaps it's simply the knowledge, deep and instinctive, that lying still in this world for too long is a kind of death in itself. You are 20,000 years in the past. This is the last glacial maximum, the deepest, coldest, most unforgiving point of the most recent ice age. If you could see a map of the world, you would not recognize it. The ice sheets stretching down from the north have swallowed entire countries that won't exist for another 200 centuries. The ocean has retreated from the coasts, exposing land bridges that connect continents. The air itself is different, drier, filled with tiny particles of dust that the wind has scraped from exposed rock and carried for hundreds of miles. This is a world that has been frozen for longer than human memory can hold. The temperature outside the cave is somewhere around -30 degrees, and that's on a good day. On a bad day, when the wind really picks up and comes screaming down from the glaciers to the north, it can drop to -50, -60. At those temperatures, exposed skin freezes in minutes. Your breath crystallizes in the air before you can even finish exhaling. The moisture in your eyes wants to freeze solid. This is not the kind of cold that makes you shiver. This is the kind of cold that makes you stop shivering, because your body has given up on that particular survival mechanism and moved on to more desperate measures. But you're not outside, not yet. Right now, you're inside the cave, and the cave is everything. The cave is life itself. You lie there for a moment longer, feeling the weight of the furs pressing down on you. There are other bodies nearby, close enough that you can hear their breathing, slow and deep. The air smells of smoke and unwashed bodies and something else, something animal and musty that comes from the furs themselves. It's not a pleasant smell exactly, but it's a familiar one. It's the smell of survival. It's the smell of still being alive. Slowly, carefully, you begin to extract yourself from the pile of sleeping bodies and furs. This is a delicate operation. Move too quickly, and you'll let cold air rush into the warm cocoon that everyone has spent all night creating with their shared body heat. Move too quickly, and you'll wake someone, and they'll be unhappy about it. And social cohesion is too important in a group of 15 people who are trapped together for months at a time to risk unnecessary conflict over something as trivial as disturbed sleep. Your hand emerges first into air that feels shockingly cold compared to the warmth you're leaving behind. Your fingers are stiff, reluctant to bend. You flex them slowly, feeling the joints crack and pop. Then your arm, then your shoulder. You're wearing layers of fur sewn together with sinew, and the clothing is heavy and stiff and doesn't want to move the way you want it to move. But it's warm. That's all that matters. It's warm. You sit up fully now, and the cold hits you like a physical thing. Even inside the cave, even with the fire burning 20 feet away, the temperature is barely above freezing. Your breath comes out in clouds. The tip of your nose, the only part of your face not covered by your hood of fur, is already starting to go numb. You resist the urge to shiver, because shivering is your body burning energy, and energy is measured in calories, and calories are measured in the diminishing pile of meat stored at the back of the cave, and that pile has to last until spring, which is still 3 months away. Maybe 4. It's hard to keep track when the sun barely rises above the horizon and the days and nights blur together into one long, dark, frozen eternity. The cave stretches around you, larger than any room you would recognize from the modern world. The ceiling arches overhead, disappearing into shadows that the firelight can't quite reach. The walls are rough stone, the same stone that extends for miles in every direction, part of a limestone formation that has been here for millions of years and will be here for millions more. There are paintings on the walls, images of animals and hunts and strange symbols that might mean something or might just be the idle scratchings of someone who was bored during a previous winter that was just as long and just as dark as this one. The floor of the cave is uneven, covered in a mixture of dirt and ash and small bones that have been picked clean and discarded. In some places, the bedrock itself pokes through, smooth and cold to the touch. Near the back, where the cave narrows and the ceiling drops lower, there are piles of supplies. Carefully folded furs that aren't being used right now. Tools made of flint and bone. Baskets woven from grass, filled with dried berries that taste like dust, but contain enough nutrition to keep a person alive. And meat, always meat. Huge haunches of it, frozen solid, stacked against the wall like a barricade against starvation. But before you think about the meat, before you think about the supplies, before you think about anything else, you have to tend to the fire. The fire is about 20 feet from where you were sleeping. It sits in a shallow depression in the cave floor, a natural bowl in the stone that holds the coals and keeps them from rolling away. Around the fire pit, someone has arranged large rocks in a rough circle. These rocks serve multiple purposes. They reflect heat back into the cave. They provide a windbreak when the cold air comes rushing in through the cave mouth. They hold residual warmth long after the flames have died down, turning into enormous stone hot water bottles that radiate heat through the long hours of darkness. Right now, the fire is low, very low, just a few coals glowing in the ash, pulsing softly with an orange light that barely illuminates the immediate area around them. This is bad. The fire is never supposed to get this low. Someone was supposed to be watching it, supposed to add fuel before it burned down this far. But it's easy to fall asleep when you're warm and full and the wind is howling outside, and the person whose watch it was has clearly failed in their duty. You feel a small spike of irritation, but you push it away. There's no point in anger. The fire is low. You will rebuild it. That's how survival works. You move toward the fire slowly, your body protesting every movement. You've been lying down for hours, and your muscles have stiffened in the cold. Your knees click when you straighten them. Your back aches. You're probably 30 years old, which makes you ancient by the standards of this time period, and you feel every single one of those years in moments like this. As you get closer to the fire, you can feel its heat, weak and tentative but still present. You crouch down beside it, your furs rustling around you, and you examine the coals with the practiced eye of someone who has been keeping fires alive for their entire life. The coals are still good, still hot at their core, still capable of bringing new fuel to life. You just need to feed them. You need to give them something to eat. Fuel is one of the great challenges of winter survival in the Ice Age. Wood exists, but it's scarce and precious. There are small, stunted trees growing in sheltered valleys, bent and twisted by the constant wind, but they're miles away, and the journey to collect them is dangerous. You have to leave the safety of the cave. You have to cross open ground where the wind can find you and the cold can sink its teeth into your flesh. You have to watch for predators, for cave lions and cave bears and packs of wolves that are just as hungry and desperate as you are. And when you finally find a tree, you have to cut it down with stone tools, which is exhausting work even in good weather. And then you have to drag it back to the cave. And by the time you arrive, you've burned so many calories that you've barely broken even. So wood is reserved for special occasions, for ceremonies, For times when the fire has gone completely out and needs to be rebuilt from scratch. For everyday fuel, you use other things. You reach for the pile of fuel that's stacked near the fire pit. There are dried grasses here, twisted into tight bundles that burn fast and hot. There are chunks of animal fat, rendered down and preserved, which catch flame easily and burn with a greasy, acrid smoke. There are pieces of dried dung, collected from the herds of mammoth and bison and reindeer that roam the frozen plains. The dung has been sitting in the sun, during the brief hours when the sun is actually visible, and it's been dried until it's light and crumbly and burns with a slow, steady heat that doesn't produce much flame, but keeps the coals alive. And there are bones, always bones. You pick up a bone now, hefting its weight in your hand. It's a leg bone from some large animal, perhaps a horse or a bison, and it's been broken open already so that someone could get at the marrow inside. The bone is dry and porous, and it will burn with a strange, intense heat that smells faintly of the animal it once belonged to. Bone burns hotter than wood, hotter than dung. Bone will keep the fire alive through the darkest hours of the night. You arrange the bone carefully on top of the coals, along with a handful of the dried grass and a small chunk of fat. Then you lean down, your face close to the fire, and you blow. Gently at first, just a soft stream of air that makes the coals glow brighter. Then harder. The coals respond, pulsing from orange to red to white at their very center. The grass catches first, tiny flames licking upward, and then the fat catches with a soft whoosh. And suddenly there's real fire again, real light, real heat blooming outward in waves. You sit back on your heels and watch the flames grow. This is one of the most satisfying moments of the day, every single day. The moment when the fire comes back to life. The moment when the darkness is pushed back a little further. Fire is magic. Fire is technology. Fire is the difference between humans and every other animal trying to survive this frozen world. The wolves don't have fire. The lions don't have fire. The bears, huge and terrible, don't have fire. But you do. And that makes all the difference. As the fire burns brighter, the cave begins to change around you. Shadows retreat into the corners. The paintings on the walls seem to move in the flickering light, animals leaping and running in place. The cold retreats, just a little, just enough to make breathing easier. You can feel the heat on your face now, on your hands, and you hold them out toward the flames, letting the warmth seep into your skin. Other people are starting to wake up now, disturbed by the sound of your movement, by the changing quality of the light. You hear someone cough, a wet, rattling sound that echoes off the stone walls. Someone else mutters something in a language that's barely language, more like a series of grunts and sounds that convey meaning through context and tone. Someone sits up, rubbing their eyes, their face creased from sleeping on their arm. A child starts to cry, a thin, reedy sound that cuts through the ambient noise of the fire and the wind. The mother, barely visible in the pile of furs, makes a soothing sound and pulls the child closer. The crying stops. Everyone knows that unnecessary noise is dangerous. Noise attracts attention, and there are things outside the cave that pay very close attention to noise. You add more fuel to the fire. Another bone, more dung, a little more fat. The flames grow taller, reaching upward toward the ceiling of the cave, and the heat intensifies. This is good. This is right. The fire is strong again. The fire will last through the day, through the next night, through however long it needs to last. But maintaining the fire is only one of many tasks that will fill the hours ahead. You need to check the clothing. Always the clothing. In this environment, your clothing is the thin boundary between life and death, and it requires constant maintenance, constant attention. A tear in the fur can let in cold air. A seam that's coming loose can spread and become a hole, and holes are unacceptable. Holes are failure. You make your way to the pile of supplies near the back of the cave, moving carefully in the dim light. The clothing you're wearing right now is your everyday outfit, the one you sleep in, the one you wear inside the cave. It's made from the furs of reindeer, layered and stitched together with sinew. The fur is soft and insulating, and it traps air between the layers, creating pockets of warmth. But it's also heavy, and it restricts movement, and after wearing it for weeks at a time, it starts to smell truly spectacular. The special clothing, the outdoor clothing, is kept separate. This is what you wear when you leave the cave, when you venture out into the killing cold. You pull it out now, examining it in the firelight. The outer layer is made from mammoth hide, thick and tough, and almost completely windproof. The fur is long and shaggy, dark brown and coarse to the touch. Mammoth fur is the best insulation available. A mammoth is adapted to live in this cold, to thrive in it, and when you wear its skin, you borrow some of that adaptation for yourself. Beneath the mammoth hide, there's another layer. This one is made from wolf fur, soft and dense. And beneath that, against your actual skin, there's a layer of rabbit fur, so soft it feels like air, so light you barely notice it's there. 3 layers. Always 3 layers. Any fewer and you'll freeze. Any more and you'll sweat, and sweat is dangerous because it dampens the fur and destroys its insulating properties, and damp fur in -50-degree where there might as well be no fur at all. You examine the seams carefully, running your fingers along the stitching. The sinew is holding up well, but there's a small tear near the shoulder where you brushed against a sharp rock during the last trip outside. The tear is tiny, barely the length of your fingernail, but it needs to be fixed. You reach for your sewing kit, which is really just a small pouch made from a rabbit bladder, filled with bone needles and more sinew. The needles are works of art. Each one has been carved from the leg bone of a bird, thin and delicate, but surprisingly strong. The eye of the needle is just a small hole drilled through the bone, painstakingly enlarged over hours of work with a sharp stone point. You have 6 needles in your kit, which makes you rich by the standards of this community. Some people only have 2 or 3. One person has only 1, and they guard it jealously, because making a new needle is difficult, time-consuming work, and there's always the risk that the bone will split or crack, and all your effort will be wasted. You thread the sinew through the eye of the needle. The sinew is thin and strong, made from the tendons of a reindeer, dried and then split into fine strands. When it's wet, it's flexible and easy to work with. When it dries, it shrinks and tightens, pulling the seam together with remarkable strength. You've been sewing with sinew since you were a child, since your hands were barely big enough to hold a needle, and the motion is automatic now, thoughtless. You wet the sinew in your mouth, letting your saliva soften it, and then you begin to sew. The needle slides through the mammoth hide with some resistance. The hide is thick and tough, and you have to push hard to get the needle through. Each stitch is careful, deliberate. You pull the sinew tight, making sure the tear is completely closed, making sure there's no gap for the wind to find. It takes maybe 5 minutes to complete the repair, and when you're done, you examine your work in the firelight. The stitches are small and even. The tear is gone. The clothing is whole again. But you're not finished. You still need to check the rest of the outfit. The pants, which are really just more furs wrapped around your legs and tied in place with strips of leather. The boots, which are made from reindeer hide, with the fur turned inward for warmth and stuffed with dried grass for extra insulation. The mittens, enormous things that make your hands look like paws, lined with rabbit fur. The hood, which covers your entire head except for a small opening for your eyes and nose and mouth. Everything is in good condition. Everything is ready. If you need to leave the cave today, you can. If something happens, if there's an emergency, you have clothing that will keep you alive long enough to deal with it. This is comforting. This is important. In this world, preparedness is everything. The fire is burning strongly now, and more people have woken up and emerged from the pile of furs. There's a general shuffling and stretching, people moving stiffly, working the cold out of their joints. Someone is coughing again, that same wet rattle. Someone else is checking on the meat supply, running their hands over the frozen haunches, making sure everything is still there. still accounted for. Theft is not really a problem in a group this small, where everyone knows everyone else, where everyone's survival depends on cooperation. But it's still good to check. It's still good to know. Food is the other great challenge of winter survival. You need calories, lots of them. Your body is constantly burning energy to stay warm, and that energy has to come from somewhere. An adult human needs something like 2,000 to 3,000 calories per day just to maintain their weight in normal conditions. But these are not normal conditions. In this cold, your body might need 4,000 calories, 5,000, even more if you're doing heavy work. And where do those calories come from? They come from meat. The last glacial maximum is not a good time to be a vegetarian. Plants are scarce, and the plants that do exist are small and scattered and contain very little energy. You can find some berries if you know where to look, some roots and tubers that you can dig out of the frozen ground with great effort. But these are supplements, extras. The foundation of your diet, the thing that keeps you alive, is meat. And there's meat in abundance. The frozen plains around the cave are home to vast herds of animals. Mammoth, huge and shaggy, moving slowly through the snow. Woolly rhinoceros with their enormous horns and bad tempers. Bison in herds that number in the hundreds, their breath rising in collective clouds. Reindeer, smaller and faster, their hooves clicking as they walk. Horses, wild and wary, their manes stiff with frost. All of them are food. All of them are calories. All of them are survival. But hunting in winter is dangerous work. The animals are desperate too. They're hungry and cold and not inclined to die quietly. A wounded mammoth can kill you with one swing of its trunk. A bison can gore you with its horns. Even a reindeer, if it's cornered, can lash out with its hooves and crack your skull. And that's assuming you can get close enough to use your weapons, which are primitive by any modern standard. Stone-tipped spears, sharpened bones, clubs. You have to get close. You have to be brave or stupid or desperate enough to stand within striking distance of an animal that weighs several tons and very much wants to continue living. So when someone does make a kill, it's a cause for celebration. The meat is butchered immediately, right there on the frozen ground, because transporting a whole mammoth back to the cave is impossible. The useful parts are cut away. The meat, the organs which are rich in nutrients and fat, the skin which will become clothing, the bones which will become tools and fuel, the tusks which are valuable for trading with other groups if you ever encounter other groups, which is rare but not unheard of. And then the meat has to be preserved. In summer, this would be a problem. Meat spoils quickly in warmth, but winter is different. Winter is a natural freezer that operates at temperatures lower than anything you could achieve with modern technology. You carry the meat back to the cave, and you stack it against the cold stone wall at the very back, where the temperature never rises above freezing. And there it stays, frozen solid, perfectly preserved, until you're ready to eat it. You walk to the meat pile now, stepping carefully over the uneven floor. The pile is smaller than it was a month ago, significantly smaller. You've been eating your way through it steadily, day after day, and the pile has been shrinking like snow in the sun. There's still enough to last until spring, probably, maybe, if everyone is careful and if no one gets sick and if nothing goes wrong. But it's getting close, uncomfortably close. You select a piece now, a section of leg muscle from a reindeer that was killed 2 weeks ago. The meat is frozen so solid that it barely even feels like meat. It feels more like stone, heavy and cold and impossibly hard. You carry it back to the fire and set it down near the flames, propping it up against one of the heated rocks so that it can begin to thaw. Thawing frozen meat is a slow process. You can't rush it. If you try to cook meat that's still frozen solid, it will char on the outside while remaining frozen on the inside. And then you'll either eat it half raw, which is asking for parasites and illness, or you'll overcook it to the point where it becomes tough and unpleasant. So you wait. You let the heat from the fire slowly work its way into the meat, gradually raising its temperature from -30 to -20 to -10 to 0 to above. It takes hours, but time is something you have in abundance. While the meat thaws, you turn your attention to another winter task, one that's somehow both boring and essential: bone processing. There are piles of bones scattered around the cave, the remnants of previous meals. Most of the bones have already been cracked open so that people could get at the marrow, which is one of the most valuable parts of any animal. Marrow is almost pure fat, rich and creamy and packed with calories. In the modern world, you might spread butter on your bread. Here, you spread marrow. It's your butter, it's your cream, it's your cooking oil, it's everything. But even after the marrow has been extracted, bones are still useful. They burn well, as you've already seen. They can be carved into tools, needles, and awls and scrapers. They can be sharpened into weapons. They can even be used as building materials, incorporated into the structure of shelters and windbreaks. Nothing is wasted. Nothing can be wasted. Waste is a luxury that belongs to a world with grocery stores and supply chains and the assumption that more is always available. That world doesn't exist yet. That world is 20,000 years in the future. You pick up a leg bone from the pile. It's already been cracked, but not very cleanly. There are still some fragments of marrow clinging to the interior, frozen and inaccessible. You take a stone, a heavy, smooth river rock that has been used for this purpose so many times that it has a slight depression worn into its surface, and you strike the bone sharply. It doesn't break. The cold has made it even harder than usual. You strike it again, and again. On the fourth strike, the bone finally splits, revealing the interior. There's more marrow inside, just as you suspected. Not much, but some. You use your finger to scoop it out, and you put it directly into your mouth. The marrow is frozen, but it begins to melt almost immediately from the heat of your mouth, turning into a rich, fatty paste that coats your tongue. It tastes like meat and salt and something faintly metallic. It's not delicious exactly, but it's good. It's calories, it's energy, it's life. You offer some to the child who was crying earlier, who is now sitting near the fire, watching you with wide eyes. The child takes the bone fragment and begins to suck on it, making soft, contented sounds. The mother nods at you in thanks. These small exchanges of food and kindness are what hold the group together. You share what you have. You help each other. You survive together or not at all. The meat by the fire is beginning to thaw now. You can tell because it started to smell like meat rather than just smelling like cold. The surface is soft enough that you can press your thumb into it and leave an indentation. It's ready. You use a sharpened piece of flint to cut the meat into smaller pieces, thin slices that will cook quickly. Then you arrange them on a flat stone that's been sitting in the fire, heated until it's almost too hot to touch. The meat begins to sizzle immediately. The sound is wonderful, one of the best sounds in the world. The smell is even better. Cooking meat, the scent of fat rendering and proteins breaking down, the promise of food and warmth and satisfaction. Everyone in the cave is paying attention now. Heads turn toward the fire. Stomachs rumble. People begin to gather, forming a loose circle around the flames. You cook the meat thoroughly, making sure it's done all the way through. Raw meat is dangerous. Even here, even now, people understand that eating raw meat can make you sick. They don't understand why, don't have the vocabulary to talk about bacteria and parasites, but they know that cooked meat is safer. So you cook it. You cook it until it's brown all the way through, until the juices run clear, until there's no pink remaining. And then you eat. You take the first piece because you woke up first, because you tended the fire, because that's the unspoken rule. The meat is tough and a bit dry, because reindeer doesn't have much fat, but it's warm and filling and exactly what your body needs. You chew slowly, thoroughly, breaking down the muscle fibers, extracting every bit of nutrition. Nothing is swallowed until it's been chewed to paste. The others eat too, taking their portions in the established order. The best hunters eat first, because they're the ones who bring in the food and they need to maintain their strength. Then the elders, out of respect, and because they have knowledge that's valuable. Then everyone else, with the children getting portions that are carefully measured to ensure they get enough to grow, but not so much that they waste what they cannot finish. Waste is unthinkable. Every calorie matters. As people eat, the cave fills with the sounds of chewing and quiet conversation. Someone tells a story about a hunt from last summer, embellishing the details, making the mammoth bigger and more dangerous than it probably was. Someone else laughs, a sound that's rare enough to be precious. A child asks a question about the paintings on the walls, and an elder begins to explain what the symbols mean, or what they think the symbols mean. The exact truth has been lost to time, but the stories remain. You finish your portion and sit back, feeling the food settle in your stomach, feeling the warmth spread through your body. This is as close to contentment as you get in this world. Full stomach, warm fire, safe cave, no immediate threats. These moments are rare and should be savored. But the day is far from over. There's still work to do. There's always work to do. The fire needs to be maintained, fed constantly with fuel. The clothing needs to be checked again, because you can never check it too many times. The tools need to be sharpened, inspected for cracks or damage. The sleeping area needs to be reorganized, the furs shaken out and rearranged. And someone needs to go outside. Outside, the word itself feels heavy. Outside is where the cold lives. Outside is where the wind waits to strip the heat from your body. Outside is where the predators hunt, patient and hungry. But outside is also where the fuel is, the dung and the bones and the occasional piece of wood. Outside is where you check the weather, assess the conditions, decide whether it's safe to venture further from the cave. Outside is necessary. Outside cannot be avoided forever. You volunteer to go, not because you want to, but because someone has to, and you're already awake, already dressed. You pull on the heavy mammoth hide clothing, layering it over your regular furs. You wrap the hood tightly around your head, making sure your ears are covered. You put on the enormous mittens. You tie strips of fur around your boots, adding an extra layer of insulation. You're transformed now, barely recognizable as human. You look more like a small, walking pile of fur. The cave mouth is about 30 feet away. As you walk toward it, the temperature drops with every step. The fire's heat doesn't reach this far. The cave mouth is a boundary between two worlds, a threshold between life and death. You pause at the edge, looking out at the darkness beyond, and you take a deep breath, preparing yourself for what comes next. Then you step outside. The cold hits you like a fist. Even through all your layers, even through the thick mammoth hide, you can feel it. The wind is screaming, coming from the north, bringing with it the smell of ice and nothing. The sky is dark, not quite night, but not quite day either. The sun is somewhere on the horizon, weak and distant, barely able to climb above the ice sheets. It provides almost no warmth, just a dim, gray light that makes everything look flat and lifeless. The landscape before you is alien. Snow covers everything, deep drifts that shift and change with the wind. In the distance, you can see the edge of the ice sheet itself, a wall of white that rises hundreds of feet into the air. Between here and there is tundra, flat and featureless, broken only by occasional rocks and the scattered remains of dead animals. The wind has sculpted the snow into strange shapes, waves and ridges and hollows that make navigation difficult and disorienting. You can see the fuel pile from here. It's about 20 yards from the cave mouth, a collection of bones and dung that's been accumulating over weeks. The pile is partially buried in snow, but it's still visible. You'll need to dig some of it out, collect enough to last through the next day, maybe longer. It's not difficult work, but it's cold work. Very cold work. You trudge through the snow toward the pile. Each step is an effort. The snow is knee-deep in places, and your boots sink down with each footfall. The wind is trying to push you sideways, trying to knock you over. You lean into it, fighting to maintain your balance. Your breath comes out in huge clouds that freeze in the air and blow away. Your eyelashes are already collecting frost. You reach the fuel pile and begin to dig. The bones are frozen together, stuck in the snow and ice. You have to pry them apart with your mittened hands, which makes the work slow and awkward. You collect several good bones, large ones that will burn for hours. You collect a basket full of dung, the dried chips breaking apart as you handle them. You find a small piece of wood, part of a branch that must have blown here from somewhere far away. This is a lucky find. You tuck it carefully into your carrying sack. As you work, you become aware of a sound, not the wind, something else, something that doesn't belong. A low, rumbling sound that might be distant thunder, except there's no storm. Your hands freeze in mid-motion. Your heart begins to beat faster. You know that sound. Everyone knows that sound. It's a cave lion. Cave lions are not like the lions of the modern world. They're bigger, much bigger. A male cave lion can weigh over 800 pounds, with a body length of nearly 7 feet, not counting the tail. They're apex predators, perfectly adapted to hunting the megafauna of the Ice Age. Mammoth calves, young bison, humans if the opportunity presents itself. A cave lion can kill a grown man with one strike of its massive paw. They hunt in prides, coordinating their attacks, driving prey into ambushes. And there's one somewhere nearby, maybe several. You don't move. Movement attracts attention. Predators are drawn to movement like flames are drawn upward. You stand perfectly still, barely breathing, listening. The rumbling sound comes again, closer this time. It's not a roar. It's more like a vocalization, a deep sound that a lion makes when it's communicating with others in its pride. They're talking to each other. They're coordinating. Slowly, carefully, you turn your head, scanning the landscape. At first, you see nothing, just snow and wind and empty tundra. Then, near a cluster of rocks about 50 yards away, you see movement. A shape low to the ground, the color of sand and shadow. And another shape. And another, 3 of them, a hunting party. They haven't seen you yet. They're focused on something else, something behind the rocks. You hear a new sound now, a high-pitched bleating, a reindeer. Young, probably. Separated from its herd, vulnerable. The lions are stalking it, moving with careful precision, getting into position. This is both good news and bad news. Good news because it means the lions are focused on easier prey. Bad news because if they fail to bring down the reindeer, they might decide to look around for other options. Options like you. You begin to back away slowly, moving toward the cave. 1 step, 2 steps. Your eyes never leave the lions. They're magnificent and terrible, perfect killing machines refined by millions of years of evolution. The largest one, probably the male, is enormous. His shoulders are thick with muscle. His teeth, visible even at this distance, are the length of your fingers. 3 steps, 4 steps. You're halfway back to the cave now. The lions are still focused on the reindeer. One of them is circling around, getting into position for the ambush. The others are holding their ground, waiting. Patience is crucial in hunting. Rush too soon and the prey escapes. 5 steps, 6. You're almost back to the cave mouth, just a little further. The wind picks up, howling louder, and for a moment you can't hear anything else. Then the wind drops and you hear a new sound, a scream. The reindeer has seen the lions. The scream is cut short, replaced by other sounds. Snarling, the thud of bodies colliding, the crack of breaking bone. You don't wait to hear more. You turn and rush the last few steps into the cave, your bundle of fuel clutched against your chest. The warmth of the cave hits you like a wave, almost shocking after the cold outside. You're breathing hard, your heart pounding. Several people are looking at you, alarmed by your sudden entrance. Lions, you say, just the one word. It's enough. Everyone understands. Faces tighten with concern. Someone moves to the cave mouth and peers out carefully, assessing the situation. They see the lions in the distance, now gathered around their kill. They'll be occupied for a while. They'll be full. This is good. You drop the fuel near the fire and begin to remove your outer layers. Your hands are shaking, though whether from cold or adrenaline you're not sure. Someone hands you a piece of meat, left over from the meal earlier. You eat it without tasting it, just grateful for something to do with your hands. The light outside is fading now. Not that there was much light to begin with, but what little there was is draining away. The long night is beginning. The longest night, because in winter at this latitude, darkness lasts for nearly 20 hours. 20 hours of black, absolute darkness, broken only by the fire and the occasional glimpse of stars through the clouds. This is when the fear comes. Not during the day, when you can see threats, when you can react and respond. But at night. At night, the darkness is complete. The world beyond the cave mouth ceases to exist in any meaningful way. You can hear things out there, movement in the snow, breathing. Sometimes howls, long and mournful, from wolf packs ranging across the tundra. Sometimes that low, rumbling growl of cave lions. Sometimes sounds you can't identify, that might be animals, or might be the wind, or might be nothing at all. Just your mind creating threats where none exist. The fire is the only defense. As long as the fire burns, as long as the light pushes back the darkness, you're safe. Predators fear fire. Even the cave lions, powerful as they are, will not approach flames. Fire is unnatural. Fire hurts. Fire is to be avoided. So you keep the fire burning, adding fuel constantly, making sure it never dies, never even dims significantly. People are settling in for the night now, reorganizing the sleeping area. This is a carefully choreographed process, honed over countless winters. The sleeping pile is not random. There's a structure to it, a logic. The children and the elderly sleep in the middle, where it's warmest, surrounded by the bodies of the adults. The strongest, healthiest adults sleep on the outside, where they can respond if something happens, if there's a threat. The furs are layered in a specific order, with the heaviest ones on top, trapping the warm air underneath. You take your position on the outer edge of the pile. This is where you always sleep now, ever since you reached adulthood and proved yourself capable on hunts. It's not the most comfortable position. You'll wake up several times during the night, either from cold or from the need to add fuel to the fire. But it's your position. It's your responsibility. The child from earlier, the one you shared marrow with, is already asleep, nestled between two adults in the center of the pile. Their face is peaceful, unlined by worry. Children in this world don't think about the future. They can't afford to. The future is a luxury. The present is overwhelming enough. More people join the pile. Bodies press together, seeking warmth, creating warmth. There's no sense of personal space here, no concept of privacy. Privacy is another luxury that doesn't exist. Everyone sleeps together, pressed skin to fur to skin, breathing the same air, sharing the same warmth. It's intimate in a way that would be uncomfortable in the modern world, but here it's just survival. Here it's necessary. Someone is snoring already, a deep, rattling sound that echoes off the stone walls. Someone else is coughing again, that same wet cough that's been present for days now. You hope they're not getting seriously ill. Illness in winter is dangerous. The cold makes everything worse. Respiratory infections can turn deadly quickly, and there's no medicine, no antibiotics, no hospital to go to. There's only the fire and the furs and the body's own immune system, trying desperately to fight off whatever infection has taken hold. The fire crackles and pops. A log, actually a thick piece of bone, breaks apart and settles deeper into the coals. Sparks rise upward, floating briefly before winking out in the darkness above. The light flickers across the cave walls, making the painted animals seem to move, to run, to live. You lie down, pulling furs over yourself, feeling the weight settle onto your body. The person next to you shifts, getting comfortable, their shoulder pressing against yours. The warmth from all the bodies combines, radiating through the layers of fur, creating a pocket of survivable temperature. Outside, the wind howls. Inside, the fire burns. This is the balance. This is how you survive. Your eyes grow heavy. The warmth, the darkness, the sound of breathing all around you, all of it combines to pull you towards sleep. But before you drift off completely, you think about tomorrow, about the work that will need to be done, about the fuel that will need to be collected, about the meat pile at the back of the cave shrinking day by day, about spring, which feels impossibly distant, like a dream you once had and can barely remember. But spring will come. It always comes. The ice will recede just a little. The days will grow longer. The herds will migrate, bringing fresh meat. Plants will begin to grow again. The world will wake up from its frozen sleep, if only temporarily. You just have to survive until then. Just have to keep the fire burning, keep the furs intact, keep eating, keep moving, keep living. You close your eyes. The fire crackles, the wind howls, and somewhere far away, impossibly far away, the future waits. A future with cities and electricity and central heating and grocery stores and all the luxuries that make cold weather nothing more than an inconvenience. But that future might as well not exist. Right now, there is only this cave, this fire, this pile of sleeping bodies, this moment. And this moment is enough, because you're still alive. You're still here. You're still fighting against the cold and the darkness and everything that wants to kill you. And tomorrow, you'll do it all over again. You wake before the others again. This is becoming a pattern, your body attuned to some internal clock that measures not hours or minutes, but the slow burning of the fire and the shifting quality of darkness outside the cave. The embers are low but not dead, glowing softly in the ash, and you add fuel before they can dim further. The ritual is automatic now, comforting in its repetition. Grass, fat, bone. The fire responds, coming back to life with a soft crackle that sounds almost like contentment. The cave is still mostly asleep, a mound of furs rising and falling with the collective breath of 15 people. Someone is dreaming, making small sounds in their sleep. Someone else has rolled away from the pile during the night and is curled up alone, shivering slightly. You move quietly over to them and tug a spare fur across their body. They don't wake, just settle deeper into sleep, and you return to the fire. Outside, the darkness is beginning to fade. Not into daylight, exactly. The sun will barely clear the horizon today, will arc weakly across the southern sky for perhaps 6 hours before sinking back down. But there's a change in the quality of the darkness, a subtle shift from absolute black to deep gray. This is morning. This is as close to dawn as you're going to get. You dress in your outdoor clothing again, layering the mammoth hide over your furs, wrapping yourself until you're more animal than human. Today, there's a specific task that needs to be completed, one that's been delayed for several days because of the weather. The trap lines need to be checked. The trap lines are always a gamble, a way of getting food without expending the enormous energy required for a full hunt. You set snares in places where small animals travel, thin loops of sinew arranged just so, and you hope that something walks into them. Sometimes you catch rabbits, sometimes foxes, sometimes nothing at all. But it's worth checking, worth the walk through the cold, because even a single rabbit represents calories, represents fuel for the fire that is your metabolism. You step outside and the cold wraps around you like it's been waiting. The wind has died down from yesterday, which is a mercy. When the wind isn't blowing, the cold is bearable. Unpleasant, certainly, painful after extended exposure, but bearable. You can function in it. You can work. The landscape is transformed from yesterday. The lions are gone, but their kill site is visible, a dark stain in the snow where the reindeer fell. There are tracks everywhere, huge paw prints that have frozen solid in the snow. You give the area a wide berth, even though the lions are long gone. Their scent might linger, might attract other predators, and you have no desire to encounter a cave bear investigating the remains. The trap lines extend in a rough circle around the cave, following the natural contours of the land. Small game animals, the rabbits and foxes and occasional ground birds, tend to travel along certain routes. They follow the bases of rock formations, seeking shelter from the wind. They move through the shallow valleys where snow doesn't accumulate as deeply. They're creatures of habit, using the same paths day after day, and that predictability is what makes them catchable. You trudge through the snow toward the first trap location. Your breath comes out in rhythmic clouds. Your boots crunch with each step. The sound carries in the still air, echoing off the rock faces nearby. Everything else is silent, deeply, profoundly silent. The kind of silence that only exists in places where there are no cars, no planes, no electrical hum, no human activity at all, except for you and your small band of survivors huddled in the cave. The first trap is empty. The snare is still set, the loop of sinew undisturbed, covered with a light dusting of snow. You brush the snow away carefully and check the mechanism, still functional, still ready. You move on to the second trap. The second trap is also empty, but there are tracks nearby. Small paw prints, probably a fox, circling the snare but not entering it. Foxes are smart, too smart sometimes. They can smell human scent on the snares, can sense the trap even when it's well disguised. But they also get hungry. Eventually, hunger overrides caution. You just have to be patient. The third trap has been disturbed. The snare is broken, the sinew frayed and torn. Something large walked through here, probably during the night, possibly one of the cave lions. It broke the trap without even noticing, just blundered through in pursuit of something else. You'll need to reset this one, but not now. Not with lion scent still fresh in the area. You'll wait a day, let the scent fade, and then come back. The fourth trap holds success. You see it from 20 feet away, a small dark shape against the white snow. As you get closer, your hopes are confirmed. A rabbit. A good-sized one, already frozen solid in the trap. The snare caught it perfectly around the neck, and death would have been quick. This is important. You don't want animals to suffer unnecessarily. Suffering serves no purpose, helps no one. You carefully remove the rabbit from the snare and tuck it into your carrying sack. The body is stiff, frozen into an awkward position, legs splayed out. Later, by the fire, you'll thaw it and butcher it. The meat will provide a meal for several people. The fur can be used for patching clothing or making mittens for one of the children. The bones will eventually be fuel. The sinew will become new snares. Nothing is wasted. Nothing can be wasted. You continue checking the other traps. 2 more are empty. One has caught another rabbit, smaller than the first but still valuable. The last trap is missing entirely, probably buried under a snow drift. You'll have to dig for it later when you have more time, when the weather is more forgiving. 2 rabbits. It's not a massive haul, but it's something. It's more than nothing. You feel a small glow of satisfaction as you turn back toward the cave. The walk back is easier than the walk out, partly because you know you're heading toward warmth, partly because you have something to show for your effort. You're not returning empty-handed. You're bringing food. The sun is marginally higher in the sky now, a pale disk that provides light but almost no warmth. The landscape under its weak illumination is beautiful in a stark, hostile way. The snow sparkles where the sun touches it, millions of tiny ice crystals catching and reflecting the light. In the distance, the ice sheet rises like a wall, blue-white and ancient. You've heard stories from the elders about what lies beyond that wall, about lands to the north that are completely covered in ice, where nothing lives, where even the hardiest animals cannot survive. You don't know if the stories are true, but looking at that wall of ice, you can believe it. You return to the cave, and the warmth embraces you like a living thing. Several people are awake now, moving around, starting their day. Someone is feeding the fire. Someone else is checking on the sick person, the one with the wet cough, offering water and soft words. The child from yesterday is playing near the fire, making small figurines out of clay, and then destroying them over and over, absorbed in the repetitive game. You present the rabbits to the group, and there's a murmur of approval. Fresh meat, even small amounts, is always welcome. One of the skilled butchers takes the rabbits from you and begins the work of processing them. This is delicate work, requiring good light and steady hands. The butcher thaws the first rabbit slowly near the fire, waiting until the body is pliable enough to work with. Then, using a sharp flint blade, they begin to skin it. The fur comes off in one piece, a little inside-out pouch that will need to be scraped and cured before it can be used. The meat underneath is lean and pale. Rabbits don't have much fat, especially not in winter, but the meat is tender and flavorful. The butcher works with practiced efficiency, separating meat from bone, setting aside the organs, saving even the smallest scraps. The liver and kidneys will be eaten first today because organ meat doesn't keep as well as muscle. The heart will go to one of the elders, a delicacy and a sign of respect. You settle near the fire and begin your own work for the day, tool making. Specifically, you need to create new spear points because the current ones are getting dull and chipped. A dull spear point is worse than useless. It's dangerous. It gives you false confidence, makes you think you're prepared when you're not. A dull point will glance off hide instead of piercing it, will fail you at the critical moment when you need it most. The process of making stone tools is called knapping, and it's an art form that takes years to master. You're competent at it, not exceptional, but competent enough to keep yourself and others equipped. You start with a large piece of flint, a stone that's been collected from a riverbed miles away and carried back to the cave at great effort. Flint is the best material for tools. It fractures in predictable ways, creating sharp edges that can be honed to incredible keenness. You hold the flint in your left hand and a smaller stone, a hammerstone, in your right hand. The hammerstone is made of a harder material than flint, something dense and unyielding. You examine the flint, looking for the right angle, the right point of contact. Knapping is about reading the stone, understanding how it wants to break. If you strike it wrong, the whole piece can shatter uselessly. If you strike it right, a perfect flake will detach, ready to be shaped into a tool. You strike the flint. The sound is sharp and clear, a distinct crack that echoes through the cave. A flake detaches and falls into your lap. It's a good flake, the right size and shape, thin enough to be sharp but thick enough to be durable. You set it aside and strike again. Another flake. And another. The rhythm of knapping is meditative, almost hypnotic. Strike, crack, examine, strike, crack, examine. Your mind empties of everything except the stone and the work. Around you, others are engaged in their own tasks. Someone is braiding sinew into rope. Someone is scraping a hide, removing the last bits of fat and tissue so it can be properly cured. The person with the cough is sleeping again, propped up against the wall, their breathing labored but steady. The child is still playing, now building a small structure out of bones, some kind of fort or shelter that exists only in their imagination. This is winter life, not dramatic, not exciting, just work, endless work, the small repetitive tasks that keep everyone alive. You spend hours at the knapping, creating flake after flake, selecting the best ones for further shaping. Your hands ache from gripping the stones. Your fingers are developing calluses on top of calluses, thick pads of hardened skin that protect against the constant friction. When you have a good flake, you switch to more delicate work. You use a piece of antler, softer than the hammerstone, to pressure flake the edges. This is finicky work, requiring precision and patience. You press the antler against the edge of the flake and push, and tiny chips detach, refining the edge, making it sharper. Each chip is deliberate, planned. You're sculpting the stone, shaping it into something useful, something deadly. After several hours, you have a finished spear point. It's leaf-shaped, about the length of your hand, with edges sharp enough to slice through hide and muscle. You test it against your thumb, not pressing hard, just feeling the edge. It's good. It's very good. You set it aside and begin work on another. The light outside is changing again, shifting from gray to a deeper gray that signals the approaching night. Inside the cave, the fire provides all the light you need. The flames cast dancing shadows, create pockets of brightness and darkness. Someone adds more fuel, a large bone that will burn through the night hours. Food is prepared again, a simple meal of meat, and some of the dried berries from the supply cache. The rabbit from this morning has been cooked and portioned out, supplementing the larger pieces of frozen reindeer. People eat quietly, thoughtfully, chewing thoroughly. Conversation is minimal. Everyone is tired. The endless cold is exhausting, a constant drain on energy and spirits. After eating, you turn your attention to something you've been avoiding. Hygiene. This is not pleasant work, but it's necessary. You can feel the grime on your skin, layers of dirt and sweat and smoke that have accumulated over weeks. You can feel the itching, the maddening sensation of lice crawling through your hair, biting your scalp. Everyone has lice. It's impossible not to have lice when you're living in such close quarters, sharing furs, sleeping in a pile. But you can manage them. You can fight back. You take off your outer layers of fur, stripping down to just your innermost layer. The cold hits you immediately, raising goosebumps on your arms. Someone has prepared a mixture of ash and water, creating a kind of paste that serves as primitive soap. Ash is alkaline, harsh enough to cut through grease and kill some of the parasites that make their home on your skin. You take a handful of the ash paste and begin to scrub your arms. The sensation is rough, abrasive, but also oddly satisfying. You can feel the grime lifting away, peeling off in gray streaks. You scrub your chest, your stomach, your legs. The paste stings where your skin is chapped or cracked, but you ignore the discomfort. Clean skin is healthier skin. Clean skin is less likely to develop infections. The worst part is your hair. You work the ash paste into your scalp, massaging it through the tangles and mats. Your hair is long, reaching past your shoulders, and it's become a haven for lice. You can feel them moving, trying to escape the ash. Some of them succeed, crawling down your neck, but most of them die, overwhelmed by the alkaline environment. You work the paste through thoroughly, making sure it reaches every part of your scalp, and then you use your fingers to comb through your hair, pulling out the dead lice and their eggs. Another person approaches with a scraping tool, a piece of bone that's been sharpened to a thin edge. This is for your skin, for removing the outermost layer of dead cells and grime that the ash paste can't quite reach. They scrape your back, long strokes that hurt but feel cleansing. Strips of gray matter come off on the scraper, a combination of dead skin and dirt. It's disgusting and necessary. When the scraping is done, you rinse off as best you can with a small amount of water that's been warmed by the fire. Water is precious in winter, difficult to obtain because everything is frozen, so you use it sparingly. The rinse removes most of the ash but leaves your skin feeling dry and tight. You'll apply some rendered fat later, after your skin has had time to air dry, to restore some of the moisture and prevent cracking. You dress again, layer by layer, and the furs feel slightly less itchy against your clean skin. It won't last, of course. In a few days, maybe a week, you'll be just as dirty as before. But for now, for this moment, you feel marginally more human, marginally less like an animal barely clinging to survival. The evening settles in, and with it comes a different kind of activity. One of the elders approaches you and several others, carrying a small stone lamp. The lamp is just a shallow bowl carved from soapstone, filled with rendered fat, with a twisted piece of plant fiber serving as a wick. The flame is small but steady, providing just enough light to see by. The elder gestures toward the back of the cave, toward the deeper darkness where the painted animals dance on the walls. This is an invitation, one that's extended only occasionally, only when the elder feels the need to connect with the spirits, to perform the rituals that bind the people to the animals they hunt. You follow the elder deeper into the cave, moving carefully over the uneven floor. The main fire recedes behind you, its light fading until you're dependent entirely on the small lamp. The air grows colder as you move away from the fire, and damper. Water seeps from the walls in places, forming small pools that never quite freeze because of the relative warmth inside the cave. The painted section is about 100 feet from the main living area, in a chamber where the ceiling lowers and the walls curve inward, creating an intimate space. By lamplight, the paintings are even more impressive than they are in firelight. There are mammoths here, rendered in red and black ochre, their tusks curved and massive. There are bison, their shoulders humped and powerful. There are horses, running in a line across the wall, their manes flowing. And there are handprints, dozens of them, made by blowing ochre powder over a hand, pressed flat against the stone. The elder begins to prepare new paint. This involves grinding ochre, a red mineral, against a flat stone until it becomes a fine powder. Then mixing that powder with fat and a little water until it reaches the right consistency, thick enough to adhere to the wall but liquid enough to apply smoothly. The process is slow and methodical, and you watch in respectful silence. When the paint is ready, the elder hands you a brush, which is really just a chewed twig with frayed ends. You've been chosen to help with tonight's work, which is an honor and a responsibility. The elder points to a blank section of wall and makes a gesture. You understand. You're to paint a new animal to add to the gallery that already exists. You dip the brush in the paint and approach the wall. Your hand is steady, your mind focused. You've done this before many times, but each time feels significant, feels important. You're not just making art, you're performing magic. You're creating a spiritual connection between your people and the animals that sustain them. By painting the mammoth, you're calling it to you, inviting it to sacrifice itself so that you can live. The paint goes onto the stone smoothly. You start with the outline, a long curved line that will become the mammoth's back. Then another line for the belly, the legs next, thick and columnar. The tusks sweeping forward in dramatic curves, the trunk hanging down. With each stroke, the mammoth becomes more real, more present. It's not just a painting. It's the essence of mammoth, distilled and captured in ochre and fat. The work takes a long time. The lamp flickers, casting moving shadows that make the other painted animals seem to shift and breathe. The elder watches, occasionally offering guidance, suggesting a change in the curve of a line or the thickness of a stroke. You're not offended by the corrections. The elder has been painting in this cave for 40 years, since they were a child. They understand the walls, understand the paint, understand the magic in ways you never will. When the mammoth is finished, the elder nods in approval. Then they take the paint and add something else. A spear driven into the mammoth's side, with small lines radiating outward to represent blood or perhaps the animal's spirit leaving its body. This is the prayer, the request. We honor you, we paint you, and in return, please give yourself to us. You place your hand on the wall next to the mammoth, and the elder blows ochre powder over it, creating another handprint among the dozens that already exist. Your mark, your presence. Proof that you were here, that you survived, that you participated in this ancient ritual. In 20,000 years, if this cave is ever found, if anyone ever sees these paintings, they'll see your handprint and know that someone once stood here, in the darkness, trying to make sense of a brutal world. The ritual complete, you follow the elder back to the main fire. The transition from the deep darkness of the painted chamber to the relative brightness of the living area is jarring. Your eyes need time to adjust. People are settling in for sleep again, arranging themselves in the pile, pulling furs into position. The fire burns steadily, well-fed and content. But something is different tonight. You can feel it, a subtle shift in the cave's atmosphere. The air feels marginally less cold. The sound of dripping water is more pronounced, droplets falling from the ceiling in a steady rhythm. These are signs. Small signs, but significant. The ice is beginning to thaw. Spring is coming. It's hard to believe, after months of cold so intense it felt permanent, but the signs are unmistakable. The days have been getting incrementally longer, the sun climbing marginally higher in the sky. The wind has shifted direction, no longer coming exclusively from the north, but sometimes from the south, carrying with it hints of warmer air from distant lands. The snow outside is developing a crust, a hard surface layer that forms when temperatures rise during the day and then freeze again at night. Over the next week, the changes become more obvious. The icicles hanging from the cave mouth begin to drip during the midday hours. The snow starts to recede from the rocks, exposing bare stone that hasn't been visible in months. In the distance, you can hear new sounds, the crack and groan of ice shifting, of the frozen landscape beginning to wake up. And then, one morning, you hear something you haven't heard in so long you'd almost forgotten it existed. Birdsong. Just a few notes, tentative and brief, but unmistakably a bird. Somewhere out there, a creature with wings has returned from wherever it spent the winter, and it's singing about the change in season, about the promise of life returning. The group's mood shifts noticeably. People smile more. Conversation increases. There's a sense of anticipation, of hope. The meat supply at the back of the cave is dangerously low now, just a few frozen pieces remaining, but it doesn't matter as much because soon there will be fresh meat. Soon the herds will migrate through, following the retreating ice, and there will be hunting opportunities. But hunting in early spring is different from hunting in deep winter. The animals are weak from their own struggles to survive, but they're also desperate and unpredictable, and the landscape is changing rapidly, becoming dangerous in new ways. The ice that seemed so solid can suddenly give way, dropping you into freezing water. The snow that you've learned to read and navigate becomes mushy and unreliable. Still, hunting must happen. The remaining food won't last more than a few days, and the group needs fresh meat, needs the energy and nutrients that come from newly killed game. A hunting party is organized, 4 of your strongest and most experienced hunters, including yourself. You spend a day preparing, checking weapons, repairing clothing one final time, gathering the equipment you'll need. The hunt begins before dawn, in that grey pre-dawn light that's become marginally brighter with each passing day. You leave the cave together, moving in single file through the snow. The traps have yielded nothing for days now, either because the small game has moved to different areas or because the changing weather has disrupted their normal patterns. So you're going after larger prey, something that will feed the entire group, something worth the enormous effort and risk. You walk for hours, following tracks in the snow. Bison tracks, several animals moving together. The tracks are relatively fresh, probably from yesterday, which means the herd might still be nearby. Bison are dangerous prey. They're huge and powerful, with horns that can disembowel you with one toss of the head. But they're also somewhat slow, and if you can separate one from the herd, if you can drive it into difficult terrain where it can't maneuver easily, you have a chance. The tracking continues throughout the morning. The sun climbs higher, noticeably higher than it's been in months, and you can actually feel a hint of warmth on your face when you're standing in direct sunlight. It's not much warmth, barely enough to register, but after the deep cold of winter, it feels miraculous. You find where the bison bedded down for the night, large oval depressions in the snow, still holding residual warmth. You're getting close. The lead hunter signals for everyone to slow down, to move more carefully. Sound carries far in the still air, and you don't want to spook the herd before you're in position. Then you see them. 5 bison, about 200 yards away, grazing on the sparse vegetation that's beginning to poke through the melting snow. They're magnificent animals, their winter coats thick and shaggy, their breath visible in the cold air. The lead hunter assesses the situation, looking at the terrain, the wind direction, the behavior of the animals, then gestures, explaining the plan without words. You're to be the one who waits. The others will circle around, will position themselves to drive the bison toward a rocky area where the footing is poor. And you'll wait in that rocky area, hidden behind a boulder, with your newly made spear, waiting for a bison to come close enough for a kill shot. You move into position carefully, crawling the last 50 yards on your belly to avoid being seen. The rocks provide good cover, and you settle in behind the largest boulder, arranging yourself so you can spring up quickly when the moment comes. Then you wait. Waiting is the hardest part of hunting, not the tracking, not the kill itself, but the waiting. You lie still in the snow, feeling the cold seep into your bones despite all your layers of fur. You can't move to warm up because movement will give away your position. You can only lie there, breathing slowly, watching the bison, waiting for the other hunters to get into position. Minutes pass like hours. Your legs start to cramp. Your nose is running, but you can't wipe it. A fly impossibly lands on your face. It must have emerged from some sheltered spot where it overwintered. The fly walks across your cheek, and you force yourself not to react, not to move, not to do anything that might alert the bison. More waiting. The sun inches across the sky. The bison continue to graze, oblivious. One of them is younger than the others, not quite full grown, and that's your target. The younger animal will be easier to bring down, will have more tender meat. You watch it, memorizing its movements, planning your strike. Finally, you see the other hunters. They're in position, starting to move, making noise, waving their arms. The bison notice immediately, their heads coming up, their bodies tensing. Then they run, and when bison run, the ground shakes. They're coming toward you, toward the rocks, exactly as planned. You remain perfectly still, even as the thundering hooves get closer, even as you can feel the vibration through the ground. Wait, wait. The young one is in the lead, panic driving it forward. It's coming right at you, right at your hiding spot. Wait, wait. Now. You spring up from behind the boulder, your spear already in motion. The bison sees you and tries to turn, but it's moving too fast, the momentum carrying it forward. You aim for the spot just behind the shoulder, where the heart and lungs are, where a good strike means death in minutes rather than hours. The spear goes in, driven by all your weight and strength, and you feel it punch through hide and muscle, feel it bite deep. The bison screams, a sound that's awful and primal. It lurches sideways, the spear still embedded in its chest, and you have to let go of the shaft or be dragged down. The other hunters are there now, with their own spears, driving them into the animal's flanks, working together to bring it down. It's not pretty. It's not clean, but it's effective. The bison collapses, its legs folding, its massive body hitting the ground with a thud. Its breathing is labored, blood frothing from its mouth. One of the hunters moves forward with a stone knife and cuts its throat, a mercy that ends its suffering. The light fades from its eyes, and it's done. For a moment, everyone just stands there, breathing hard, adrenaline still coursing through your bodies. Then someone laughs, a sound of relief and triumph, and the mood shifts. You did it. You brought down a bison. The group will eat well tonight. The group will survive. The butchering begins immediately. This is messy, exhausting work, but it has to be done here on site, because transporting an entire bison back to the cave is impossible. The animal weighs more than 1,000 pounds. You can only take the best parts, the most nutritious parts, and leave the rest for the scavengers. The hide comes off first, carefully removed so it can be used for clothing or shelter. Then the meat, sliced from the bones in large pieces. The organs are removed and set aside, the liver and heart and kidneys wrapped in the stomach lining for transport. The bones are marked for later retrieval, when you can make a second trip with a sled. Even the blood is collected in the stomach, a nutrient-rich liquid that can be made into a kind of soup. By the time you're finished, hours have passed. The sun is beginning its descent toward the horizon. You load as much meat as you can carry and begin the long walk back to the cave. The meat is heavy, the packs digging into your shoulders, but you barely notice. You're bringing food home. You're bringing life. The cave comes into view just as the sun is setting. Someone must have been watching for your return, because people begin to emerge, excited and hopeful. When they see how much meat you're carrying, a cheer goes up, a ragged sound of joy and relief. That night there's a feast. Not a huge feast, not a wasteful feast, but a celebration nonetheless. Fresh meat is roasted over the fire, the smell filling the cave, making everyone's mouth water. The best pieces are portioned out, with everyone getting a share. The liver is divided among the elders. The heart goes to the hunter who made the killing blow. The tongue, tender and fatty, is given to the children. You eat until you're full, truly full, for the first time in months. The meat is rich and flavorful, so much better than the frozen jerky you've been surviving on. Fat drips down your chin and you don't care. Everyone is eating with abandon, laughing and talking, the mood lighter than it's been since the first snow fell months ago. After the meal, people sit around the fire, too full to move, too content to worry about tomorrow. Someone tells a story about a hunt from years past, when they were young and foolish and nearly got trampled by a mammoth. Someone else sings a song, wordless and haunting, a melody that's been passed down through generations. The child falls asleep in their mother's lap, their belly full, their face peaceful. You sit with your back against the cave wall, watching the fire, listening to the sounds of your people. The coughing person is quiet tonight, sleeping deeply, their breathing easier. The fire crackles and pops, flames dancing upward. Outside, the wind has stopped entirely, the first truly calm night in recent memory. You think about the winter that's ending, about everything you've survived. The cold, the hunger, the fear, the endless darkness and the constant work and the moments when it seemed like spring would never come. But you did survive. You all did. And tomorrow, when you wake up, the work will continue. There will be more hunting, more butchering, more tool-making, more repairing of clothes and tending of fires. Life will go on. But tonight you can rest. Tonight you can feel satisfied and safe and warm. You step outside one more time before sleep, wanting to see the night sky. The clouds have cleared, blown away by winds from the south, and the stars are visible. Thousands of them, millions of them, spread across the black dome of the sky like ice crystals. But they're arranged differently than they would be in the modern world. The constellations have shifted over 20,000 years. The North Star isn't quite where it should be. The patterns are familiar but wrong, like a song you know being played in the wrong key. You stare up at those stars, and you think about time, about the vast stretches of it that separate your moment from moments that will come thousands of years in the future. You think about your descendants, the children of your children of your children, stretching forward in an unbroken chain through the centuries. You think about how they'll have easier lives, warmer homes, safer food, how they'll sleep in beds instead of on piles of fur, how they'll have forgotten what it means to be truly cold, to be truly afraid of the dark. And you realize that your survival right now, in this moment, is what makes their future possible. You are the link in the chain. You are the reason they'll exist. Every day you survive, every fire you keep burning, every piece of meat you bring back to the cave, you're building a foundation for a future you'll never see. The thought is both humbling and empowering. You matter. Your life matters. Not because you're special or chosen, but because you're here, because you're fighting, because you refuse to let the cold and the darkness win. You take one last breath of the cold night air, watching it crystallize in front of you, and then you turn back to the cave, back to the fire, back to the warmth and the people and the continuation of life. You settle into your spot in the sleeping pile, pulling furs over yourself, feeling the familiar weight and warmth. The person next to you shifts, getting comfortable, and you shift with them, finding the position that works for both of you. The fire burns low but steady, a guardian against the darkness. The wind outside is silent. The stars turn overhead in their ancient patterns. And as the embers of the fire fade to a soft red glow, the wind outside seems to quiet down. You are safe, you are warm, and the long winter is finally over. Sleep well.